Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Je suis Luis Giraldo. That sounded really nice. I like that. I've been in the IT business for a few years, 12 years to be specific, and it's really been an interesting career for me. I've started with a small consulting company that later got sold to Fully Managed, which is how I met Chris Day, the CEO of IT Glue. And I was at Fully Managed for about a year. Learned a lot of stuff. And Fully Managed was a much larger MSP, about 50 people, 60 people now. At the time, it was in a very steep growth curve. Fully Managed was growing very quickly. And there were many things to learn, many challenges to overcome. And I really, it was the opportunity that I had to really get into understanding how the business of an MSP works and why it's so important to create recurring revenue, of course. When I left Fully Managed, I started my own consulting company called Ook. And then I also started a software company in 2013, ironically to do software documentation, because at that time I was bringing on a business partner to my consulting business, and it was already very difficult to share information with this partner in a consistent way, in a standardized way. Monkeybox grew a little bit throughout the years. It was mostly a side project for me, but then was acquired in 2017 by IT Glue, and that's how I came to be at IT Glue as of February of last year. And it's been a great run. IT Glue is a fantastic product. I think it helps a lot of people really drive consistency, scalability, and standardization in their business, which are key components of being able to grow a managed services business. I also work closely with the Apple Consultants Network. I sit on the advisory council for that group. It's a group of people that work within Apple to maintain a consultant program that is largely in the US and Canada, but also in the UK and Australia. And so that's a really interesting place. We get to stay close to many Apple-related issues and programs and stuff like that. And I've mostly been an Apple consultant traditionally, but our business is very much a mixed platform business. We support Windows, Linux, Mac, anything you're using. I also happen to play keyboards with Shakira back in the late 90s. That's a picture of early Luis, and it was a good time. I learned a lot about scaling a business very quickly through that experience as well, because at that time Shakira was going from playing small shows in Colombia to playing larger stages and arenas internationally. And so how you grow logistics and how you go production, I later realized how much I learned about seeing that and how people organize around the larger objective, which is really interesting. A little bit about IT Glue, also founded in 2013, a little bit later in the year. Today we have over 4,300 partners worldwide. We have a total of about 65,000 partners the last time we checked, 65,000 users, I should say. And IT Glue is now about 100 employees. We have partners that are all over the world, 34 countries so far and growing. And so this is a fantastic thing that we'd like to see, people signing up to IT Glue from all over the world. So the topic for today is really to explore this idea of how my own business reached a certain revenue target. In our case, it was $1 million, $1.2 million, Canadian dollars, I should add, because once you translate that to euros, it's not quite 1 million euros, but very close. And so one of the things that I put together as I thought about this webinar are some of those, what we call hindsight in English. I'm sure there's a good word for that in French, Oleg, of all the things that you look back and you realize you were doing or that you should have done. So we call that hindsight, and we say the expression here that hindsight is 20/20, meaning whenever you look back, your vision is perfect. And so there is a number of things through the growth of my own business that I realized we maybe were doing correctly, or maybe we should have done differently. And these are a few of those learnings and or teachings. And the first thing is why. When I started doing IT work, it was simply because I enjoyed doing IT work, and I was curious about technology and helping people. And I wasn't always thinking, you know, this would be a great business, but rather is I need to make money, and I know how to do this, so I'm going to do this more and hopefully make more money at it. And so the initial way that I created my business was really just trying to give myself a paycheck. But later, I started to really think, okay, why is it that I want to continue doing this? And so one of the key aspects of that is to understand the difference between your purpose and your mission. And the reason I state that is because, you know, a mission might be to create value for your shareholders if you have some investors in your business, but a purpose is really more of what makes you want to go to work every day, what gets you up in the morning, so to speak. And so for me, the purpose really became the thing that I was chasing, is understanding what made me tick, why it was important for me to do this work for my customers. And so in the process of understanding the why, it was important to create a brand promise, is what we call in English. And so a brand promise is really that that call to arms, or that last stop, the one thing that you can rely on your business or your people to connect to or connect with. And for me, that was the saying of the buck stops here. My attitude around this brand promise was really, I can no longer point the finger. I can't expect to provide great support and great service to my customers at the same time as I give the responsibility to others for failure. And so when stuff doesn't work, it was ultimately my responsibility, and I made it my responsibility, and I chose to be the one that makes it work. And so that became one of the things that my clients most appreciated about the way that I engaged with them, the way that I provided service. So I think it's important for all of us to discover that in our process. You know, might be different for you, of course, but for me, this idea that I'm the one that's ultimately responsible was really important. Now, at the time, I was also a one-person business, and so there was nobody else that this responsibility ended with except me. So it was clearly important that that I was willing to accept that responsibility. That was also the reason I wanted a partner in the business, is to share a little bit of that accountability and that responsibility, and not be the only person that can never go on a vacation, that can never get away. And so that's when I brought a partner in 2013, and we started growing the business from there. The other piece of that, when I went to Fully Managed and there was a larger business there, I originally joined Fully Managed to create the Apple practice within Fully Managed. And later on, I was given a team of consultants that were doing projects and other special work like that. And so it's when I first started to play around with the idea that leadership is not the same as management. And I think I certainly lean more towards the leadership style. I want to empower people, give them the tools they need to be able to succeed in their own way, on their own. Whereas management tends to be simply giving people a very specific framework to work within, and sometimes it can be very constricting to do that. And so leadership is really interesting, and I think leading by example is one of those things that's really important. Item number 2 is the idea of all-in seat pricing. Early on in my consulting business, I think many people go through this challenge. I really had difficulty coming to terms or being comfortable with charging more money. I always felt that it wasn't justified, or that I couldn't really explain what was in that price that I was wanting to charge. And so I remember for a long time, I kept my prices fairly low as a result. But also in the beginning, I was mostly working hourly, doing projects and other service and support by the hour. And so very quickly you reach the maximum number of hours that you can work. and then you're not able to make any more money than that. So it becomes a challenge very quickly when you're not charging for that value. And so as we grow and learn, I've become more and more comfortable charging more for that experience and for that value and for how quickly I can solve an issue. And those things obviously impact the bottom line of our customers. The more quickly you can resolve an issue, the less time they lose in their business. And so it's when I really started to think about changing my perception from hourly-based IT to value-based IT. And in this respect, there is a fantastic book by an author by the name of Alan Weiss. And Alan Weiss wrote a book called Value-Based Fees. If you can find a copy of this in French, it's a fantastic book that really challenges your thinking around how you charge for your work and what the value of it is and how you create value for your customers. And so speaking of value, I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make is obviously not understanding that they can charge more and not understanding what the value of their service is and what the value to the business that you're supporting is, which is ultimately what you should be charging for. And I think pricing loses to value every single time. If you compare the two things, if you try to make your work about the amount of time you spend, you will never be able to create enough value in the business or enough revenue in the business. So I think the mentality really needs to change in this respect, and I'm still working on this. It's always difficult because people want small projects here, and it's hard to charge on a value-based idea for small things. And so I find that we have a little bit of a combination. We do most of our projects for a flat fee. All of our managed services is flat fee, and then some little projects and little things we just charge by the hour because there's just no other reasonable way to do that. So we continue in that process. But part of that process is also to stack your services in a way that you can increase that all-in seat price and create more value to the business. Just recently, I was in a Slack group where I was chatting with some MSPs that are in the New York area, and they work very closely with a vertical or a type of business that is specifically around insurance, and they have many compliance regulations and requirements. But the seat price for one of those users in one of those businesses, I think they said was $300 US per month per employee. And so in Vancouver, our business charges about $125 per user. And so they're talking about being more than double. And so as we have started to explore what they include in that seat price, it really became interesting to see how much they're including in what they call their managed services platform. They're including many pieces of software that enable productivity, obviously the support and help piece, the managed services component, but they're adding VoIP and security awareness training and all these other things to their platform, to their stack that allows them to increase that seat price. And so for a few years in our business, we've been doing the same thing as well. This year, for example, we're introducing security awareness as part of our service. So many people are getting email hacks and email breaches, and they're quite impactful. We've had to deal with a few of those in my MSP business, and every time somebody's email gets hacked, it's going to take 8 to 10 hours to deal with one incident. And that's just the work that we have to put in, never mind the impact to the customer's business of, some credit cards maybe that had been shared over email or stuff that's been shared insecurely being stolen, and now their own customers being sent emails by the person that was hacked. And so this continues and perpetuates indefinitely. And so it creates a lot of friction for the business. So think about how many services you're including in your stack. This is, I think, a key aspect of being able to raise the perception of value in your service. Number 3 is one of the things that's really interesting to me is standardization. Early on in my business, I knew that I was a little bit of a Cisco snob when I began. Every customer that I signed up to be on a contract, I would give them a Cisco iOS router, and I deploy only Cisco switches, and that was fine for a little while, but Cisco iOS is something you have to become familiar with and learn. And so when I brought my business partner on, this proved to be very difficult. And so we started taking on other products, and within a few months, we now had several customers with different products. Some had a Sonic Wall router, some had a Netgear router, some had a Cisco router, and we were starting to do a lot of Meraki at the time as well. And so what was interesting is how many of these different products that we were supporting became a lot of work, because now you have to learn that many more products. And so one of the key things that I find can help drive the scalability for a business is just standardizing on your stack. You know, deciding every customer that we deploy a router and a switch and wireless for are going to get a product from these brands specifically. It's what our staff knows best. It's what we can support more easily and more quickly. And so you got to consider, you know, if you have 10 different products and you have to create 10 different SOPs or standard operating procedures for how to create a VPN tunnel on those products, that creates a lot of work. Every time your staff members join the company, they have to learn 10 different products. It creates a lot of work. A lot of time is invested in that. And so removing a lot of that, a lot of those options can help your business really scale. Not only that, but also more of your junior staff can perform more of these complex tasks if your stack of tech is very standard, because everybody knows it. And so I think this was an important aspect. And today, for example, our consulting business, we always deploy a Meraki router. We deploy primarily HP switches, and we deploy Ruckus wireless, for example. That's our stack at the moment. And pretty much every single customer has that same stack. And so it makes it very easy. Now we're 5 people in Ook, and now it makes it really easy for any of us to help our customers. And I think the challenge is that, as I was explaining, the more variety that you have in your products and around your customers, the more challenging it is to create documentation for it, to bring staff onto the business and train them. And it just creates a lot of friction. Coherence, consistency is one of the things that comes out of standardization. And so when you don't have standardization, you have those issues where maybe one of your staff members is an expert at Juniper or Cisco iOS. And so anytime a customer needs something with a VPN, the tickets have to go to that one staff member. And that becomes a challenge too, because you have to funnel all that work through one person. So it's not very easy to scale that. However, if your stack is very standardized, then you can deliver a much more consistent service. And of the things that I've learned is that the more consistent the service is, the happier customers are, because there's definitely a difference between, you know, if somebody calls one day and gets great service and the next day they don't get nearly as great service, that lack of consistency itself is more of a problem than receiving bad service the one time, really. And so consistency is key. The part of consistency that we looked back and realized, how can we make this better, is really to surround it with all the other pieces to make that experience really great. And so building an amazing experience is a key part of this. And when you're 1 or 2 people, sometimes the metrics are really difficult to track. But when I went to fully managed, it was really obvious how important the metrics were, and some of the things that we were tracking, or along the way, we started changing the focus on what we were tracking, because some things made more sense than others. For example, the urgency of tickets is something that has to be very clear for everybody. And so one of the things that we went through exercises with all the staff on was making sure everybody understood what was actually an urgent ticket. And this is important to train your customers on as well, because to end users, sometimes everything is an emergency. And so it's important to help them understand how to what to expect from the types of issues that they're having and when they send a support ticket. And even then, one of the things I've learned is that a lot of the management of tickets is managing the expectations that the end users have. And so if you can at least give them a quick response and explain when you're going to get to their issue, I find that that de-escalates most emergencies. The TNT metric is really interesting. Today, not tomorrow, is what that stands for. And so as you grow and you have more new customers, obviously you have more tickets on a daily basis. And so tracking how many of the tickets that were created in a day were closed on the same day was an interesting metric, because as soon as we knew that tickets were staying there overnight or that it took a couple of days to resolve them, we knew that people would not be happy. So tracking that was an important metric. First call resolution, FCR, is an interesting metric too, because it's interesting when people try to want to close a ticket on the first attempt or first call. That's fantastic, but it needs to be done properly, because otherwise it ends up in a reopened ticket. And that creates friction, it creates unhappiness and all these things. So what was important about this metric for us was to not reward staff on first call resolution, but to track it closely and understand whether people were doing a great job on their first attempt or just delaying the resolution of the ticket. The tickets per seat or per business is a really interesting metric as well. I think this is a way that you can really start to understand which of your customers are creating a lot of noise, as we call it in your business, or creating a lot of work for you. It's one of the metrics that allows you to catalog your clients later on, to understand who are your most profitable clients versus your least profitable clients. So this is a metric that is really helpful in many aspects of the business. Best-in-class numbers for this. Some of the best-in-class numbers are half a ticket per seat per month. So if you're supporting a 50-user business and you get 25 tickets from that business in a month, that's best-in-class. Sometimes they're lower and the profitability is really high, and that can also be a problem. That means you may not be spending enough time with the customer at all, and this also leads to the customers wondering what they're paying you for. And so this is where the creation of value is so important, and spending time with them, working on their budgeting and their technology planning and all the non-ticket related things is really important as well. Tracking hours per ticket was also really important because we wanted to be careful of tickets where people were spending a lot of time to find a resolution. And I think this is where decision making and understanding root cause is a really key thing. And some people are great at finding root cause of issues. Others will spin their wheels and spend a lot of time trying to find the resolution to an issue. And so watching these metrics was important so that we could just swap people out of a ticket if they were just not getting anywhere with it. And then finally, the customer experience survey, or CES, or NPS is called in many different platforms. As a 1 or 2 person business, it doesn't really make sense sometimes to turn this on, because in the beginning I was sending surveys to customers and they would rate me to me, and I would be the one receiving the survey. And so people were somewhat uncomfortable with it. Most of my customers asked me to just turn that off, and so I did. So instead, I really worked on that quarterly business review process where we get to discuss that. I'll talk about quarterly business reviews later on. This is just a slide to illustrate how important it is to know where all the time is going. So specifically understanding which tickets are taking the most amount of time. It helps you understand how performance is on a per engineer basis or per technician basis. Understanding again how each client is performing, how many tickets they have per month, how much time you're spending on every customer. And standardized processes really tie into this heavily, because the more standard your processes are, the quicker it is to deliver service to those customers, and the lower those numbers or metrics are going to be. Very important is, if you are operating a business that relies on SLAs or service level agreements, is that you have a process to review these every time you miss one, because I saw an interesting presentation last year by 2 fighter jet pilots where they have this process after every flight. They can go in a room, and this is in the military, so they have superiors, obviously, but they can go in a room where there is no rank and no class, and they can discuss freely what the challenges or problems that they may have experienced were, so that they can improve the process. And I think this is an interesting thing to maybe adapt into IT businesses, because one of the challenges is technicians are sometimes afraid to challenge the status quo or the process, and management is always wanting to impose their way of doing things. And so whenever an SLA is missed, if people can go in a room and have no consequence for discussing something freely, I think we can make things better, generally speaking. And so I would just wanted to tickle your mind with that idea of whether you're doing that or not. Most importantly, once this process is reviewed, being able to feed this back into your standard operating procedures or your service desk or your project team to make sure that these changes are implemented is obviously important, so that you don't miss those SLAs. Early on in my business, one of the things that I did was I really didn't have an SLA, but I promised that response time was one of the key issues. And so initially, customers were really attracted to that. Oh, he always answers the phone very fast, and he gets back to us very quickly. But as soon as there was a problem that maybe required a little bit more work, there's really no incentive to turn that around quickly. And so that customers will start to feel that pain as well. And so I think the minimum requirement is that you answer the phones very fast. I don't think this is the difficult part of doing IT service. And so if you're growing and you have more people, more challenges or calls than you have people, then obviously getting somebody to answer the phones is important. But offering a resolution-based SLA was a really interesting thing to do, because it really makes you accountable to the customers. And so they have a problem, if you can promise them to resolve the issue within 4 hours or 8 hours or whatever it is, then this creates a little bit more accountability in the business. Obviously, you need to be able to do that, of course, otherwise you're missing these SLAs all the time. But this is that balance that comes through bringing on people and them having the right experience and knowing how to solve those challenges. Number 5, the relentless pursuit of process. So this is an interesting slide. I think every day in the business, one has to be thinking about process and how to optimize the way we do things, and how to make things less variable and less risky to complete, because there is no documentation or because there is no checklist. And so checklists are an important aspect of that. Flowcharts help people understand what needs to happen. You may be familiar with the fact that we recently introduced checklists into the IT Glue platform. And so this is really one of the reasons why, is because we want to help people create process in the business. We know that that is one of the key factors of delivering more consistent service. And so it really helps to have that checklist mentality. And so when those processes are defined very clearly, technicians can deliver that service very easily, very consistently, but more importantly than that, technicians of many levels can deliver the same service the same way. And so this is what allows even your most junior people to possibly perform a very complex task, as long as they can follow a checklist closely. So keep that in mind, checklists. If we have a webinar that we've done on checklists specifically, and there's more coming in the future with checklists and processes and so on. The shoulder tap is a real challenge in IT, and I think as new staff come on, if you have had any kind of growth in your business and you've had to bring new people on, we did a benchmark survey last year, and the main reason for that was to try and understand what some of the best MSPs are doing, and how how long it takes them to bring a new staff member on board and that kind of thing. So one of the things we learned is that the top performing MSPs, it takes them about 1 month for a new staff member to become at least 80% productive. Compared to a smaller business with not as many processes or procedures or checklists or SOPs, it can take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for smaller businesses to do this. And so during this time, as they're learning, they're always tapping the shoulder of the engineer next to them. Hey, where's the password for this? Hey, how do I do this particular process? And so these things become very painful, and they just rob your technicians of a lot of their time. And so this is why IT Glue has become such a clear time saver and efficiency driver for businesses. Who's got that password again, as I was saying? And so one of the challenges with most businesses is how to be better, faster, and or cheaper, or deliver cheaper service, or at a lower cost. But the old saying goes, you can only pick two. You can't have all three. But what we find is that as you start to drive standard operating procedures and processes and your documentation is complete, more and more you're able to achieve all three. And as you are achieving all three, then your service desk can become very lean and very efficient. And so I see, it's interesting, we talk with lots of businesses in IT Glue that are all over the spectrum, you know, one-person businesses to 200 and 500 person businesses. And so it's interesting to me to see, for example, that there are 3-person businesses that make $1 million, and there are 10-person businesses that make $1 million. And so what's the difference? Like, how is that even possible that there's a 7-person difference, yet the 2 different businesses are making the same revenue? And so it really comes down to how they're putting these 3 items together, how to be better, faster, and cheaper. And that was certainly the experience for us as we grow our business. Obviously, we have some projects from time to time that bring up the revenue number. But what we found is we were very efficient, and so we're able to drive a $1.2 million gross revenue with 2 people. That obviously continued to grow throughout the years, and our most recent fiscal year end, we completed at close to $2.3 million with 3 people. And so my point to make that observation is that this does scale. The more efficient you are, the more easy it's to scale your business and to do the same things with a bigger number of customers. But also your mentality has to scale, because it's often very common as you're growing a business that you'll take any customer of any size, because you just need to, you have to make money. And so we take on the 3-person businesses and the 5-person businesses, and then along comes a 50-person business, which seems like it's going to be a lot of work. But in our experience, we quickly realized that 50-person businesses are often the same effort to support as a 15 or 20-person business. So that really started to change my mentality of like, well, why aren't we supporting larger businesses if it's roughly the same effort? And obviously that helps drive your revenue growth. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Number 6 here is the daily double down. And this is more of a metaphysical slide, as I like to call them sometimes. I think IT can be very hard sometimes, and so if you just carry on without giving yourself the opportunity to recommit to the work that you're doing, and to reestablish your love for your craft and the outcomes and helping people, I think it becomes very difficult to scale, because we just get very tired. We start to hate some of our customers and hate some of the work. And so it's just important to recommit to this on a daily basis. So for me, it worked really well to say, okay, today's a new day. I'm going to try and make the best experience for every single call I make today. And reminding myself of that daily was really helpful. Reminding myself of what is the objective, what am I trying to accomplish today? And I think that helps in my level of happiness. If people see you leading with this example as a business owner, your staff will also start to adopt this behavior. It's no secret that people behave the way that others around them behave. And so I think these sort of behavioral changes are important to lead with example. But also, if you have problems in your business or problems with some of your service delivery, when you start to grow, these challenges will be 3 times as difficult. But on the plus side, as you make some efficiency changes and you make some operational changes, these things can also scale very well. So keep that in mind. Thought leadership was important for me as well. I remember that the reason I started to speak at events or conferences was because I wanted to attend this conference very badly. It was a conference in Sweden back in 2012 for Mac admins. And so I was really wanting to go, but it was very expensive for me to attend. And then I saw they had an open call for speakers, and they provided a small stipend that paid for travel and hotel and so on. And so I decided I was going to try and speak about wireless design, for example. And so I created a presentation about this. I pitched the conference organizers, and they accepted my application to present. And so I was able to attend the conference, and this became sort of the reason why I would find a topic to present on. And later on, these were all technical topics, obviously, that I'm speaking to other IT people about. But what I quickly found that was really interesting is that my customers didn't really care about that so much. I mean, it was nice that they saw that I was presenting internationally. They feel that that made me an expert in my field and so on. But that didn't really provide any value to them necessarily. And so I started to change a little bit of my style of presentation into the business aspect of things and understanding how business works and how to drive value and risk assessments. And this became much more appealing to my customers because now we could talk about something that we have in common. None of my customers care about wireless design, but they do care about risk and understanding where the business is operationally efficient and how they can leverage technology and those things. And so I would challenge you to think, what the last blog post on your website was about. For example, if you have a blog on your site, was it a technical topic that other IT people might be using, or is it a business topic that your customers might be interested in? And so as I started to write more things about business, I saw my customers more engaged and more interested in talking to me. Managing your book of business, and I apologize, these jump a little bit all over the place because they're just hindsight items, and so they don't follow a specific thread, but they're all connected in a way. Managing your book of business is a really important aspect as well, because one of the challenges that I saw early is that sometimes customers were growing and they added new people, and I was forgetting to adjust their monthly contracts as a result. There was one customer in particular who over 2 years, they hired 20 people and their contract was still for the original 20 people, not for 40 people. And so for 2 years, I missed out on that revenue, extra revenue opportunity as they were growing. And so I think keeping tabs on this or finding processes to adjust these things quickly and efficiently is important. The way I did it was through quarterly business reviews. And so quarterly business reviews allowed me to make sure that these things were being checked. And so one of the things that I'm going to offer as a download later on is a template for delivering quarterly business reviews, which is just an Excel spreadsheet. And so it'll be an interesting way for you to talk to the customer about how the relationship is going, what the staff changes have been, to look at their budget and understand what risk they're comfortable with. I find that there's many MSPs that like to make customers buy stuff, or else they're not going to help them and they're going to let them go. And so that's not always my attitude about things. I prefer to give people a choice, but they need to understand the risk that they're taking on by not deciding to replace the server or not deciding to replace the workstation. And I'm okay with leaving things as they are as long as they understand the risk. And what happens most often than not is that they will decide to make that change because they become uncomfortable with the risk. So that quarterly business review and the template that I have really helps people approach their IT from just a risk tolerance perspective. and help them understand what's the most meaningful thing to them. Churn is evil, of course. You never want to lose customers, because if you're losing a lot of customers, and you're spending most of your time just trying to replace those customers. And so I think obviously keeping your service desk in order is important. It'll prevent you from losing customers you don't want to lose. But it's also important to understand that there is good churn as well. There are some customers who are probably not a great fit with your business, who are perhaps not interested in driving efficiencies and investing in their technology, and perhaps it's important to let them go and make room for yourselves to support clients that are better aligned with your strategy and the way that you do business. And so consider churn from both of those perspectives. I think as small MSPs, we're not super sales focused all the time. And so this can be really hard. So we just focus on providing great service, but also letting go of customers that are not efficient and not really helping themselves. But along this process, it's really key that you cross-sell and upsell, especially as you introduce new products into your platform, into your offering. For example, we're introducing the security awareness training. We're calling it Ook Aware, for example, but it's not enough to just offer it to our existing clients. We're also turning it into a product that somebody that is another customer or prospect out there might be looking for just that, and then they come to us for that security awareness training and then discover all these other things we could do for them. So I think anything that you add to your stack could be a product itself. Learning how to productize your offering and your specific services is important, and it allows you to cross-sell and upsell to customers, ultimately increasing that all-in seat price and elevating your stack. One of the things I do in the quarterly business review is we sort of rate our customers in a number of areas. And this is a conversational topic, of course. We talk through some of these things. We literally just review the spreadsheet and we explain why we've chosen certain things. We put some of the metrics on one of the slides. You'll see it in the download later on. But this creates some conversation topics around what are the things that need to change to make some of those numbers better. And by far, one of the things that is the most impactful with customers is the visuals that we put on one of the slides in particular. So when we, for example, discover that this customer has a 6-year-old server that's out of warranty and a big risk to the business, we'll put the icon with the bomb on that particular line item. And it's crazy how much customers just want to get rid of the bombs. They hate seeing the bombs on their report, and this creates sort of a visual attachment to what the report was, as opposed to just, you know, consulting talk, and them not understanding anything that this is about. So I think the visuals are important. You'll see this in the spreadsheet as well. This really helped us sort of drive that point home. At the same time, they love seeing everything with a green check mark, and so that really becomes the objective. And if you can do these on a quarterly basis, it's easy to go back and compare how things have been changing, and ultimately this allows you to show the value that you're providing. It's like, hey, we've been able to make all these improvements throughout the last year or the last 2 years, and this is how you start to change the customer's mentality from hourly IT into value-based IT. And I think all these things together really are going to help you drive that. Comparing your clients, an A client, a profitable client that is very happy versus, you know, maybe not so profitable client, but still a happy customer that you like working with as a B client, and ultimately C clients that maybe are not so profitable and are not making investments in their technology. So it's important to catalog your clients and to make a very specific plan to replace them. You know, replace your C clients with A clients. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you'll realize it's not a lot more effort to support a 50-person business than supporting a 15-person business. And so sometimes that difference in revenue for not much more effort, it makes a big difference to small MSPs like us. Part of the QBR process is also to make customers accountable for their own challenges. And so, you know, making sure that conversations with the finance team, that they're paying their bills on time, that you're talking to management and the management is talking to you, all these things can be brought up in a quarterly business review that helps people be just more attached to the service. As a result, you can focus on profitability. The more profitable your clients are, the more efficient and scalable you can be. So ultimately, this was what allowed us to grow. Now we're in the process of hiring our 6th employee, and we'll be 6 people very soon. And so this is pretty exciting to see this growth happening organically. We're now able to hire. Before, we're absolutely crunched for time and space. And so we can grow strategically. And this is one of the things I see at IT Glue as well, is that the business has been able to grow strategically by adding the necessary people that drive the growth, as opposed to waiting until you just can't handle any more work and then hire the next person. That's really no way to scale, because you create a lot of challenges with service in the process of doing it that way. So fixing margins is really important as a result. Review your vendor relationships all the time, understand what you're spending for stuff, what's creating the most efficiency and or scalability for you. We know for a fact that IT Glue is one of those platforms that people perhaps initially don't realize it. They think it's an extra cost and not really necessary, but within 6 months of using IT Glue, they can't imagine a day in their life where they didn't have it, and they can't imagine growth without it. And so that's really important to drive profitability. But how you think about this for customers is also important. And the more efficient their technology is, the more profitable they can be as well. Many years ago, we also got rid of invoices. So we expect payment on the 1st of the month for every contract. We send out what we call pre-authorized debits here in Canada. People sign them, and we withdraw money from their accounts every month on the 1st of the month. And it really changes your perspective when you can start the month with money in the bank, as opposed to start the month chasing money from every customer to try and pay your own bills. And so as a small business, you really don't want to be spending time doing that. You want to just help people. And so if you can implement a process to require that pre-authorized debit or automatic payment, this is probably one of the best things you'll do for your small business. Finally, and this is more of a metaphysical slide as well, is to really stop thinking about solving tech problems. And I think this is one of the challenges that many small MSPs have, because many of us started as a technician that just loved tech and loved solving problems. But businesses don't need technical problems solved, they need business problems solved. The technical problems come along with that, of course, but this is why this slide is a little metaphysical, is because the conversations that we need to have with our customers are really about business. And so many times I've seen somebody go into a meeting room and just talk about servers and RAM and gigabit, and people get lost in that conversation. They just want to know how to make their business more efficient and how to use technology better, and how to reduce risk and exposure. And so these are the things that we need to do with a business conversation, not a tech conversation. So thank you. This is, we have, I know, a little bit of time for questions and answers. Up there is the link that I promised that has a download with the PDF of the slides for this presentation, as well as a spreadsheet of the quarterly business review template that I use, as well as a onboarding checklist. The onboarding checklist, I apologize, it is in English. It has a lot of items, so there's no way I could translate it for you, but it may be helpful for you to understand how to set a baseline when you bring on a new customer, and what to review when you're doing a site assessment or a customer assessment. And I love talking about the quarterly business review stuff. It's something that's worked really well for us in our business. And so if you'd like to discuss that at all, please email or follow me on Twitter or whatever you'd like, and happy to have a conversation offline about that. Once again, thank you to Oleg and the team at Watsoft for hosting us and bringing this presentation to you guys. I know that there might be some questions out there, so I'd like to hand it over to Oleg to coordinate that, and then we can answer some questions.
Okay. How do you fix this, in your case, the prices that you are charging for devices, for different kind of workstation servers? What was the methodology you used to define your pricing in Vancouver?
Sure. Yeah. So what's interesting is you can go on on Craigslist, for example, and find people that are offering IT support for $30 per staff member per month or something like that. And it's crazy. It's just not a sustainable business model. So it's funny that in some cases I've actually reached out to these people and asked them and said, hey, are you having any success bringing on new customers, or are you bringing on the right kind of customers? And all I wanted to do is just understand if they realized what they were doing, not only for themselves, but also to the industry. And, I'm not trying to price fix and arrange the industry by any stretch, but I think what I've learned is that a higher price has an interesting psychological effect of customers perhaps perceiving that it's a better service. And so you have to obviously provide something that matches that. But the way we started charging for service, I remember I looked at so many resources and books and things that explained, oh, you can have a silver, a gold, and a bronze package, and offer these services here and these services there. I very quickly wanted to simplify. I just wanted one plan, one price, very simple invoice to every one of my customers with maybe 2 or 3 things on it, and that's it. Because when you give customers a menu of choices in your invoice every month, they're invariably going to question what all those things are. And so it just confuses matters. And so what we started doing was charging per user per month. We decided however many devices the user needs to use, we'll support them. If the user has a home computer that is not in the business, we'll give them some help with it, configure their email, whatever. Their mobile device, no problem. Their work device, of course, we put our agent, our RMM on it, Mac or PC, it doesn't matter. And then for most businesses that are, a one server business with some backup, we decided we would just include the support of those servers in the price of the user. And so we simply decided, let's just have a minimum number of users per month that we work with. In our case, it was 10 people was the minimum. And we just charge per user. Now, there are some scenarios where that doesn't work. For example, there's one of our customers who's a retail operation, and they have maybe 40 or 50 people that are rotating on 30 computers. And so in that case, we decided we would just charge by computer the same amount. In our case, it's $125 per user, or in this case, per computer. And then they could have more people, but only 20, 30 people are using a computer at any given time in that case. So I find that simplification worked really well for us. The idea of charging X dollars per workstation, X dollars per server, just didn't feel good. Became very messy on the invoice with too many items, and so we like the simple per user fee. Ultimately, that's what we're supporting as the end user. The workstations, we can make work, we can automate the patching, the updating, all these things, so that the workstations are really not the issue, but rather the support of the user is.
Okay, thank you. So there is a question about the author of the book you have.
Yeah, the name is Alan Weiss. The book is called Value-Based Fees. I've just put it in the chat window for everybody. Very powerful book. I think this really helped me change my mentality about, charging hourly versus charging for value. And like I said, the key is to not necessarily think that you need to make a sweeping change of everything at once, but rather it just helps shape the conversations that you're having with customers. Alan Weiss is an HR consultant. And so, the premise of the book is essentially that you need to find what problem you're solving for the customer and how much pain and or cost is associated with that particular problem, as opposed to, you can go in and say, well, my fee is $800 an hour, but that doesn't necessarily solve a problem. That just means you're going to charge X number of hours for something. And so I think, that conversation around value is very interesting. I love that book. I reread it every few years, and I always find something new, or it reminds me of something I need to try or change in my business to continue down that path of value instead of hourly.
Okay, thank you, Luis. One last question. You mentioned 9 tricks. If you have to choose one from the 9 to start with, what you will suggest as?
Yeah, so I guess my answer would probably depend on the size of MSP that's asking me the question. A small MSP, I would probably say the all-in seat price is one of the key aspects, followed very closely by standardization. But all-in seat price, I think just raising the price to a place where you can give yourself room to grow and implement some standards is a much better way to grow. You know, what's interesting is not everybody wants to grow. I think even in our business, we had decided early on we just wanted to stay small and stay boutique. And so we were 2 people, and then we were 3, and we're like, okay, yeah, that's it. That we're not going to hire any more people. But you know, as we have grown older as well, our interests are changing. And so we brought on a 4th partner this year now, and he had an employee, so now we're 5 all of a sudden. And now we feel like, hey, we need a junior IT person to help us with some of these other challenges. Now we're going to be 6, and so I think the all-in seat price is really one of the key factors that allows you to grow if you're charging the right amount of money. And so otherwise, you just end up creating so many constraints for time. If people are completely slammed all the time, they're A, going to be unhappy, B, they're not delivering great service, and B, you end up losing a lot of customers and spending most of your time replacing them. And so all-in seat price is my choice.
Okay.
My pleasure, Oleg. Thanks again for having me. I hope everybody that attended had an okay time understanding what I was saying, and feel free to reach out to me. I can throw your questions into Google Translate and then try to figure out an answer that way. But if you're comfortable in English, feel free to send me your questions. Be happy to chat about it for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup à tous les participants de cette... on a notre responsable produit MSP, Service Manager, Damien Dupéra, qui s'est familiarisé avec la solution sur les questions, on va dire, commerciales. Et puis, on a déjà des personnes certifiées au support technique. N'hésitez pas à nous demander une démonstration personnalisée. C'est quelque chose qu'on pourra organiser, mettre en place.